So we just finally got the release date for Arcane Odyssey, and it will be releasing on the 25th. You heard me, the 25th. That is this Friday, and I'm excited. So I wanted to go over what you guys need to know about Arcane Odyssey, and also why you guys need to play and why it's such a good game. So for those that don't know anything about Arcane Odyssey, it's basically a story-focused RPG game. And it's pirate themed too, and you got a lot of ship stuff involved, a lot of ship combat. You got magic, fighting styles, weapons, and you can really choose your path. It's really open world, but it's also still story engaging. Some of the gameplay paths they have told us about is you're able to become an expert cook, a master of potion brewing, an infamous bounty hunter, and many more that I'm just not familiar with and they haven't said directly. But in my opinion, the most exciting thing about Arcane Odyssey has got to be the exploration aspect of Arcane Odyssey. Let's compare Arcane Odyssey to something we're probably all familiar with, a one-piece bandit beater type game. I'm just gonna say bandit, I'm not gonna name a game specifically. Y'all probably know, have your own ones in your head. In these types of one-piece games, although you are moving from island to island, and that would feel like there might be some exploration part of that, there's really not. There's nothing in between it. You're just kind of driving in a straight line to the new island to do the same thing you did on the last island. And although Arcane Odyssey is a story-based game, it still allows you to go explore and do other things on the map that aren't directly involved with the story. Like go do side things, side quests, and stuff of that nature. And they've overall just added a lot of different stuff, so it doesn't feel like it does in a one-piece game. We're just going from island to island. Like mid-ocean, there's a lot of stuff. Like obviously, there's other pirate ships. You could get attacked. You got ghost ships, which are basically dead ships that basically lead you to where their ship is sunken, so you could go get loot from there. And I feel like all these small different interactions will keep the game feeling random and fresh and doesn't feel like you're just playing the same thing. And they all also have a purpose too. You could get different magics like lost magics or ancient magics, which are basically like scrolls that are harder magics to get, but I believe they're gonna be better too. And then you got money drops, and money will help you upgrade your ships. And I'm not sure exactly about weapons. I'm sure there is some weapons you could get with money too, but ships is really important in this game because pretty much your whole game revolves around your ship. And then you gotta recruit NPCs to your crew, which help your ship depending on how good the NPC is. And you can even find NPCs at sea that you can add to your crew. So there's a lot of different things, and you see how the game kind of flows all together really nicely. But now that we got the basics of Arcane Odyssey out the way, I want to go over some of the classes because you guys are gonna have to pick a class, so you guys need to know about that when you start the game. So each class has a whole different play style, and they also have different buffs and then different awakenings. So for example, Warlock is when you have magic and strength build, so it's a hybrid between magic and strength. And eventually, if you do pick Warlock, you will eventually be able to imbue your magic in your fighting style. So then you could get things like an ice sailor style, which I actually showed us a video of, which I'll put on screen right now if it's not already on screen. But it's not just limited to sailor style, and it's not just limited to ice. Like for example, if you had light and imbued it into your fighting style would now be faster since it's light, and that's kind of its buffs. Or fire, I imagine it would do fire damage. And I believe there is one for every single one, so that just shows how in depth this game is. Because think of how many combinations there is with this, and there's also a bunch of different builds you can have with their own buffs. You can have so many different builds in this game, it's crazy. And then you got stuff like Conjurer, which is a different build which uses weapons and magic. And in Conjurer, once you awaken it, you're actually able to imbue your magic into your weapon. So I imagine it works similar to how it does with Warlock, it's just with weapons. I also want to clarify, you don't have to have magic. For example, with the Berserker class, you could put it all in strength, all in, and then you could get 2 fighting styles. And there's a bunch of different fighting styles to pick from. You got boxing, base combat, sailor style, thermo fist, iron leg, and then there's some that aren't added to in Cannon Fist. There's also ancient and lost fighting styles just like there is for magic, but I'm not sure if those are in the game yet, but they will be eventually added. And then you got Warlord, which is a mix of strength and weapons, and basically this allows you to infuse your fighting style onto your weapons to give your fighting style the properties. So pretty much everything has like some sort of thing where you're able to infuse something onto another thing, so it's pretty cool to see that. And if you put it all into one, for example like Warrior, you get some sort of compensation. So for example with Warrior, since you put it all in weapons, you're able to use multiple weapons. Now what you pick really just depends on play style. And there's also a more in-depth video on specifically awakenings by a YouTuber named Select Torch. If you want to go watch his video, it's pretty good. But now I want to talk about arguably the coolest thing inside of Arcane Odyssey, and that's the magic interactions. It's like on some Pokemon type stuff. For example, each magic has different like effects on other magics and different weaknesses and advantages, and they all also have different type of effects that they put on the person that they're hitting. For example, like fire obviously has like a flame damage status effect, but then you also have other stuff like sand has a sandy status status effect. Like water has a soak status effect. And these all have different things that affect a person. All the interactions are listed on the trailer, but here's some of the specific stuff for like wind, for example. Like it removes the soak status effect on water and deals 10% less damage. And it removes the burning status effect on fire and deals 10% less damage too. And every single magic has a whole bunch of different interactions. So you guys should go look at that. And they have clashing rates too. Now I want to talk about combat, but before we talk about combat, I want to look at some of the concerns I know a lot of people have about Arcane Odyssey and combat too. So I've addressed this before, but I know a lot of people are really concerned about the graphics in Arcane Odyssey. I'm not gonna lie, they're not the most pretty graphics. But you guys need to remember, gameplay is so much more important than graphics. It would be cooler if the graphics were a little more flashier, but the sacrifice in graphics to be able to push out the amount of gameplay they are pushing and all the interactions, I think it's worth it. Like, let's be real here, even if you don't think the graphics are good, you're gonna adjust to them. Like when you play a nice game for the first time, it looks amazing, right? But then when you keep playing, like, you adjust to even good graphics and it doesn't look as cool anymore. So you're gonna adjust in the same way. And like obviously you're not gonna have that first time like, yo, this looks amazing, but the sacrifice for the gameplay is worth it. And I promise you would rather have this than a game with good graphics and bad gameplay. So now looking at combat, I do know a lot of people don't like the jumping around and hyper movement combat, and a lot of people are calling it block shoots combat. But with knowing how in-depth the game is with all the different interactions and whatnot, you could tell the combat is skill based, and also the combat is unique. It's not like any other game. So although I haven't actually played the combat system, I feel like it's still going to be cooler than games like GPO, where everyone copied their basic combat system where you just infinite combo people with no like sort of difference. And I feel like this combat is even more skill based than literally just memorizing an infinite combo. But I guess when the game finally opens up, we'll find out. But another thing about this game, it's not a combat driven game. This game is a lot about story. Like I said, it's a story driven game. Like the progression is meant to be fun in this game. It's not like games like bandit beater games where you're supposed to grind the bandit beaters to get to the fun part. It's actually supposed to be fun beforehand too. I know a game can have fun progression. I didn't believe that either, but I mean, we do still gotta see how fun it actually ends up being. I haven't played the game, but that's at least from what I've seen from people that have played the game. But even though combat isn't the main focus of the game, combat is still a big part, and I believe they're hosting like custom combat, like PvP stuff. So stay tuned for that. That's gonna be pretty cool to see. But what are you guys' overall thoughts on Arcane Odyssey? I mean, it seems like we have a ton of different stuff to do, and the storyline's supposed to be fun and not like a thing that you have to go out of your way to do. It's supposed to just flow nicely and be fun, but also I feel like the whole game flows nicely. But for those that don't know, this is early access release. It's not the full thing, but early access will be free. And the story, for example, I don't believe is complete. I believe a certain part of it is complete, like a portion, but I don't believe the whole thing is complete. So we gotta wait for updates for that. And also there's cool things like the Dark Sea, which basically cuts you out from the rest of the world. Like you can't contact anyone else in the game. It's super stormy there. But there's a whole ton of different stuff and good drops you could get from there. So that's the purpose of going there. But I believe the Dark Sea is something you do after you complete everything. So I believe that's endgame content and should be really replayable to keep the game fresh. But yeah, I don't believe it's coming on release. And there's also aspects such as like you could take over an island, like your kind of crew could take it over, but I don't believe that will also be on release. And also there will only be 5 players per server on release, so it's easier and less lag, so you'll be able to really experience the game and the story. But after 1 week, it will be going back to what it's supposed to be, and that's at 18 players. I'm also going to be streaming the game on release, so if y'all want to come by and ask questions about the game, or so we can all help each other out on stream, you feel me? Like if y'all don't know what to do, I probably won't know how to do everything too, so make sure to pull up. And I'd appreciate if y'all would subscribe, because these videos take a lot longer than you would probably think, so I'd appreciate it. Thank y'all.